fit them.
How long did the big meeting room down there have all the broken shit?
Exactly,
yeah.
broken furniture, and
They
then
have meetings in
we're
there.
having public hearings in the room with all the broken
Yeah,
furniture.
yeah.
That was about 5 years
Yeah.
it took to get. And I agree with priorities, and I know we're in, we continue to be in tough economic times, but it just seems like you fall just more, you fall further behind every year. And you get to a point where you can't, it's like you're never gonna get the stuff you need, you're never gonna be able to buy it, so.
We need a new set of tires on the car, but they're still just a smidgen
Right.
more than what's legal.
Right, yeah.
They're 11 years old.
They might be dangerous,
They're
but.
11 years old, and they told us to get rid of them at 6.
Right.
And, but we're still riding on them.
Yeah.
Because they're still legal, sort of.
Right.
And they keep going around.
There's mostly no tread left, but. So anyway, that's my annual screed, I guess. I just,
You want to turn it into a motion for
So
the textbooks
frustrated.
at least?
well, again, I want to ask Carl and Keith, so this will go to the finance committee and the selectmen? How?
Well, this would, this would be added to our level services budget, in fact.
So that's on top of the budget we have now, we would, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
I'll make a motion that we approve the elementary science textbooks and the elementary everyday math textbooks as part of our fiscal year 11 small capital request. Well, for a total of $86,000.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? All those in
I-
favor? Oh, go ahead.
I think that we ought to add the smart boards and the exterior doors.
You know, knowing the issues that we have with our budget already, that's a tough one.
We're already anywhere from a $0 to $1 million deficit, and that's a good range. But I mean, that's, what, we're.
I think one alternative might be to submit them as a separate standalone warrant article, so it doesn't
I
impact
hate
the
that, I
budget.
think it's cheating.
They're a part of what we should be doing. And later on, we're going to have somebody come out and say, you need to take something out of your budget. Well, then we can look at these things maybe. But we should have them in. They're things that, as Mel has just said, these are things that aren't grand. They are things that we should have in our schools.
Let's, I don't know, I would certainly consider adding them, because essentially what we're doing is we're just decreasing
Increasing our budget.
And since we don't know what our appropriation's gonna be, we're gonna have to adjust our budget anyway. So this is a question of prioritizing. We know when it comes down to it, we're gonna buy the textbooks first, and if we can't do the other things, we're not
We
gonna do
have
them.
a prioritizing that
Right.
we've already established.
But at least we're gonna consider it or include it, and if there's not enough money for it, then we have to adjust our budget accordingly anyway.
Well, I think that Carl is saying he's hoping he can do the doors within the budget this year, correct?
I'm
Pretty confident?
90-10 confident.
Okay. The other question I would ask, though, is, I really like the smart boards. I was in a school this weekend where they were in every classroom, or this past week, and you see the difference in the way the kids pay attention. At least I did.
It's a great teaching
Right.
tool.
These are
Right.
obviously requests that were made by the principals
Yes.
for those.
Yep.
Having
Mary,
a visual learner,
the
I
lockers-
know the value.
Right. How important are the lockers, though? Because how big is the issue? I'm assuming the kids have to carry their backpacks around here pretty much all day, because they have no place else to put them, correct?
Actually, no, you don't see that
They're
many
not
kids in the
allowed
hall
to
with backpacks. I don't-
Yeah,
I
you
don't-
don't
So they
allowed
do
to
jam them into the
They
lockers
jam in the
somehow.
lockers, or they leave them at home or something.
It's-
Leave them in their homeroom, probably, yeah.
I
And
think
it's an
we could
item for
pass
the
on that.
renovation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
exactly, that's, yeah.
That's,
I didn't include the classroom furniture or the lockers on my list, because to me, those are things that are high likelihood that we're going to move on in the next 2 or 3 years, and we'll
Say
have
your
those
second, and then yeah,
provided. The smart boards are movable,
Okay.
and
So-
you can move them to a new facility.
So-
And so that they're a traveling type thing. Furniture, you probably gonna end up with new furniture in the whole
wanna add numbers 2 and
If
3?
if Jerry rescinds his second, I'll rescind my motion.
Yeah,
and then-
I can rescind it, or you can amend the motion.
Oh, actually, okay, I'll amend the
Amend the
motion
motion.
to add in the smart boards for the high school and middle school, which then I believe makes the total $156,000.
And I'll second the amended motion.
Let's get double check the number. 70,086, yeah?
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. While we're talking about the budget, why don't Mel and I give an update from the finance planning team?
You were you there this past meeting?
Yeah. Yes, when
Oh,
you
yeah.
were called on your
Yes,
comment.
yeah.
Yes.
I did want to clarify, as actually speaking to Carl tonight, I commented at the last meeting about,
Transparency.
transparency, apples to apples budget, making sure that everybody's on the same page and all that kind of stuff. And basically what I'm referring to is, I'm not referring to people, moving money around or people trying to hide things that they're spending. I was just basically saying that there are some things that we end up spending a lot more on than, are initially in the budget. And I use an example, snow and ice removal. And all I was, asking for, and there are some things in the school department that we sometimes spend more on, is that we did have a good discussion about this at the finance planning team meeting, that at some point, we need to explain to the town what is really being spent on each item. For example, last year, I think of something like $850,000 was spent on snow and ice, yet the budget was $125,000 or $150,000. And it just, so I'm looking for apples to apples comparisons and where everything is spent. And that was, the other issue though is, the finance committee would like to meet with us. There's not a clear consensus as to how we should be putting our budget together. I think we're committed to putting a level services budget together. And I know that the Selectmen and Finance Committee, I would say, want a level funding budget.
Right.
In fact, they are actually asking us to come in with a budget that's about $600,000 less than we spent this year. And Carl and I and Maureen were arguing the fact that we expect to get a lot more Chapter 70 money, and they're still asking us to cut 10% on our Chapter 70 funding from the state. So we need to, I still think we should go for a level services budget, because I don't want to see us start chopping away at the school system again.
We can't,
Right.
we can't.
Last-
We've already done that. We were at 4.5 days a couple of years ago. We have recovered part of that. We are at a minimum level. I don't understand why they can't understand that. It just,
And we did our part in collective bargaining.
yeah,
You're
right.
right.
We did our job.
We certainly
So-
did.
We are at the minimum that we can be at.
Well,
That's it.
at issue is the Chapter 70, which is the school funding
Correct.
that state sends. Last year, the state sent to North Reading through Chapter 70, $6.8 million. Now, the state had to supplement that, and they supplemented with federal stimulus money that the state had at their disposal. I really don't care how the state got that money. They have other sources, they have rainy day funds, they have the right to cut other departments. But the foundation budget to get North Reading to foundation cost the state $6.8 million in aid. And we're of the opinion, Carl and I representing the school committee, that the $6.8 million is what we're getting next year. It's what we should be
The
using for
governor has
budgeting
proposed, $6.875 million or something for North Reading. The budget that the number we're getting from the town at the Finance Planning Committee has $5.4 million, I believe. So there's a $1.4 million difference there. Now, I even said, look, if we want to get down to 6.3 or 6.4 million, okay, but we shouldn't be all the way down to 5 point, and that's the number that they're asking us to budget to, and I just don't see any sense in doing that.
I think that when the governor stepped forward last year and filled in the gap in Chapter 70 monies, he first addressed the cities and towns that were not at foundation. The first will take the money, will establish a level playing field, and they identified a couple of dozen school districts, and North Reading was one that was not at foundation. And I think we should hold everybody to that standard. we're not gonna take less than foundation. Every school department should take that stand. There's no reason 300 should be above foundation and a couple of dozen below.
It's generally accepted that foundation budgets are inadequate to teach
Right.
kids today. That's general acceptance. If we're below foundation, we can't teach kids, that's about it. And, you know, we just need to get out there and make that point. They're obviously not very smart if they can't pick that up.
So Cliff, if we use that 6.8 million number for local aid, combined with the money that, I'll say this again, we smartly as a committee and with our administrative team decided not to spend all of the ARRA money, so we've got about 350,000 left from that money, whereas a lot of other districts spent it all this year. If that 6.8 million is a correct number, then we're probably looking at a deficit that's more in the $200,000 or so, well, a little more tonight after this small cap request.
Right.
Probably about a $300,000 deficit versus a 1.5
Yes.
million or a $1.8 million deficit.
Right.
I was at a meeting, and before the last meeting, a couple of days before, and there were a number of legislators, state legislators, at that meeting. And that was right after the governor came out with his numbers. The upshot of it was that they said that you could expect to have something less than the governor's shot. And they were talking 5 to maybe 10% less. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, I've read somewhere in the reams of material that we all see, where because the state used ARRA money, they're trapped into
Right.
providing us with at least that funding.
That's exactly correct.
So we should be looking at 6.8.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's what we should be looking at.
I agree.
And the town's receipts didn't go down, as far as we're concerned. They didn't go down. What we get trapped in every year is the same thing, where we work on the historical number, the percent, and they cut the revenue that we get by some percent, and then they say, well, this part's the schools and this part's general government. I'm not buying that, not at all. We should be working on the basis of what need is, and look at the priorities in town, and not just go on a historical basis. And I know that I'm going to be chastised for that. We're the finance committee, a selectmen, somebody is going to come out and beat up on me for that. But that's how I feel, and I'm too old not to voice my opinion. So that's where I'm coming from, and I'll say that at town meeting, and I'll say that to anybody that wants to hear it. We need to provide for the education of the kids. We are at the barest minimum. We have been for year after year after year, right down as low as it can get. Over and over, every criteria that we look at, and we still produce students out of here that do great on test scores. We're to be commended for that. But that's only a part of it. That's the test scores. That's not all of the other things that those kids are missing out on in the system, because we can't finance those things. The languages and other things that we don't provide.
Why don't we schedule a meeting with the finance
Yeah,
committee?
we will. And I think that as a school board and as a town, we should really stand strong against the governor doing across-the-board cuts. He's gonna take a look at schools that are maintaining or just meeting foundation and say, we can't touch them. And if there are towns that are above foundation, that's where you're getting the money. But I think that we finally got to foundation, net minimum spending. We've gotta dig our heels in and say, you can't take it back.
Well, I guess my other point is, if the governor's proposing 6.8 million, hopefully there wouldn't be a 10% cut. But if, say there's a 5% cut from 6.8 million, well, that's $340,000. We're still at 6.35 million, not the 5.4 million that right now we're being asked to budget toward, which I don't think is a realistic number.
And how they got the 5.4.
Right, 10% of